Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Manhattan Met Charity Gala Dome. Perignon Champ bubbled in the crystal glass as Sophia Nguyen observed the elegant crowd on the Metropolitan Museum's terrace. At 25, she had learned to hate these high society New York parties. Too much flash, too little substance, and always someone trying to discover what scandal the Nguyen family was hiding this time. Sophia, look here. The shrill cry of the paparazzi cut through the air like nails on a chalkboard. She turned instinctively, forgetting rule number 1 she'd learned at 16. Never look directly at the cameras when you don't want to appear on covers. 3 photographers approached like vultures, enormous lenses pointed in her direction. Darn it, she muttered. Her brother Liam had specifically asked her to keep a low profile today. The family company was in delicate negotiations with Japanese investors, and the last thing they needed was another Nguyen splashed across page 6. Sophia stepped back, her Jimmy Choo heel slipping on the marble dampened by the Central Park breeze. Her heart raced. Where was the exit? The terrace was packed, couples dancing to a jazz quartet, waiters circulating with trays of fresh oysters. "Sophia, is it true your family is selling the construction company?" shouted one of the photographers, advancing like a predator. She turned desperately, looking for an escape route, when she bumped into something solid, very solid. "Careful there," said a deep voice with a soft Texan accent. Sophia looked up and found herself facing the most disturbingly handsome face she'd ever seen in her life. Sculpted jaw, eyes, the color of aged whiskey, dark hair perfectly tousled. The man wore a tuxedo that cost more than her Upper East Side apartment. And there was something in his posture that screamed power and trouble in capital letters. The flashes exploded behind her. "Please," Sophia whispered, grabbing the lapel of his tuxedo. "Help me." For a second that felt like eternity, they stared at each other. Then, without warning, the stranger pulled her against his chest and tilted his head. The kiss was electric. It shouldn't have been. It was supposedly fake, a distraction, a trick to confuse the photographers, but the moment his lips touched hers, Sophia forgot how to breathe, forgot where she was, forgot mainly why she was running. The world exploded in flashes. When they finally separated, Sophia was trembling. The stranger held her by the shoulders, his golden eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her blush. "Alexander Brooks," he introduced himself, his voice low. Sophia's blood froze. Alexander Brooks, the Texas magnate who had stolen $3 million in contracts from the family construction company in the past year. The businessman Liam called an arrogant cowboy and destroyer of family businesses at breakfast. The same Alexander Brooks, who had turned business rivalry into personal war when he bought the Brooklyn land the Nguyen family had wanted for decades. The family's #1 enemy, and she had just kissed him in front of half of New York's social press. "Shoot," Sophia whispered. Alexander raised an eyebrow, a dangerous smile curving his lips. "Interesting way to put it," he murmured. "But I have to say, Miss Nguyen, that was quite the performance." He knew who she was. Of course he did. Sophia took a step back, the world spinning around her. The photographers continued firing their cameras, shouting questions about the secret romance and the union of rival families. "This is a disaster," she murmured. More to herself. "Actually," Alexander said, adjusting his shirt cuffs with calculated movements, "I think this might be exactly what we both need." Before Sophia could ask what the heck he meant by that, her phone vibrated, an Instagram notification, then another, and another. With trembling hands, she unlocked the screen. The first photo was already viral. Sophia Nguyen and Alexander Brooks in a passionate kiss on the Met's terrace. The caption read, "Breaking. When heiress falls for Texas, rival secret romance or business strategy." 1,000 likes in 2 minutes. "Oh my goodness," Sophia whispered. "Liam is going to kill me." Alexander approached so close she could smell the expensive cologne he wore. Something that smelled like leather, cedar, and pure danger. "Perhaps," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial, "we should discuss damage control. My penthouse, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. "I'm not going to your penthouse," Sophia retorted, finding her voice. "Then enjoy explaining to your brother why his sister is on tomorrow's cover of every tabloid in New York," Alexander replied, handing her an expensive business card. "The choice is yours, Sophia." He pronounced her name as if it were something delicious he was tasting for the first time. And then, before she could respond, Alexander Brooks disappeared into the crowd, leaving Sophia alone with the card, cameras still flashing, and the terrible certainty that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. Her phone rang. "Liam," Sophia looked at the screen, then at the card in her hand, then at the photographers, still circling her like sharks smelling blood. "Darn it," she muttered and answered the call. "Sophia," her brother's voice exploded through the phone. "What the heck were you thinking?" "Alexander Brooks's penthouse, Fifth Avenue." 24 hours later, Sophia stood in front of the gleaming glass tower that housed Alexander Brooks's New York headquarters, seriously reconsidering every life choice that had led her to this moment. The building screamed wealth and power, all clean lines, imported Italian marble, and the kind of understated luxury that cost more than most people's houses. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop since last night. Liam had yelled for exactly 17 minutes before hanging up. Her mother had called from their family estate in the Hamptons, speaking in rapid-fire Vietnamese about family honor and what the neighbors would think. Even her cousins in Miami had sent concerned texts peppered with crying and laughing emojis. But it was the magazine covers that really made her stomach churn. People, Love or Revenge, Sophia Nguyen's Secret Affair, Us Weekly, The Kiss That Stopped Manhattan, page 6, Enemy Lovers, Inside the Nguyen, Brooks Scandal. The elevator to the penthouse required a special keycard. Of course it did. Sophia smoothed her black Diane von Furstenberg dress, conservative enough to not give Alexander Brooks any ideas, but stylish enough to maintain her dignity, and tried to remember the breathing exercises her yoga instructor had taught her. The doors opened directly into his apartment, and Sophia's carefully maintained composure cracked. The place was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park, the city lights twinkling like scattered diamonds against the autumn sky. The decor was minimalist but warm. Rich hardwood floors, carefully chosen artwork that mixed contemporary pieces with Western influences, and furniture that probably cost more than her car. Punctual, came that familiar voice from somewhere behind her. "I like that in a business partner." Sophia spun around to find Alexander emerging from what looked like a home office, wearing dark jeans and a white button-down shirt rolled up to his forearms. Without the formal setting and tuxedo, he looked younger, more approachable. Also, unfortunately, even more attractive. "We're not business partners," Sophia said firmly. "We're two people who made a mistake that went viral." Alexander's smile was slow and dangerous. "Are you so sure about that?" He moved to a bar cart that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel and poured 2 glasses of what appeared to be expensive bourbon. "Blanton's Single Barrel," he said, offering her one. "I figured we'd need it for this conversation." Sophia accepted the glass but didn't drink. "What conversation, exactly?" "The one where you explain how you're going to fix this mess." "The one where I explain how this mess might be the best thing that ever happened to both of us." She stared at him. "Are you completely insane?" Alexander settled into a leather armchair that looked like it belonged in a gentleman's club and gestured for her to sit on the sofa across from him. "Tell me, Sophia, how much do you know about my business dealings in New York?" "I know you've been systematically undermining my family's company for the past 2 years, she said, remaining standing. "I know you bought the Brooklyn Heights property out from under us just to spite Liam, and I know you've been stealing our clients with underhanded tactics." "Underhanded tactics?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "You mean better prices and superior service?" "I mean predatory pricing and corporate espionage." He took a sip of bourbon, considering, "Your brother really doesn't like me, does he? Liam thinks you're everything wrong with corporate America. He calls you a vulture capitalist at least once a week." Colorful, Alexander leaned forward. "And what do you think?" The question caught her off guard. What did she think? Before last night, she'd accepted Liam's version of events without question. Alexander Brooks was the enemy, period. But looking at him now in his home, she found herself wondering about the man behind the reputation. "I think," she said carefully, "that you didn't answer my question about fixing this mess." Alexander's smile widened. "Right to business. I like that too." He stood and walked to the windows, hands in his pockets. "Tell me, what do you know about the Hudson Yards project?" Sophia's breath caught. The Hudson Yards expansion was the holy grail of New York real estate, a massive mixed-use development on the west side that would transform Manhattan's skyline. Every major developer in the city had been vying for the contract, including Wynn Construction. "The announcement is supposed to be next week," she said slowly. "It has been decided," Alexander confirmed. "Brooks International got the contract." The words hit her like a physical blow. Liam had been working on the Hudson Yards proposal for months. He'd poured everything into it: time, money, the company's entire reputation. If Alexander had gotten the contract instead— "You snake," she whispered. Alexander turned from the window. "The thing is, Sophia, winning Hudson Yards comes with certain social requirements. The city partners want someone who understands New York culture, who can navigate the social scene, who has roots in Manhattan society." Understanding began to dawn. cold and unwelcome. They want a wife, she said. They want a partner, someone who can charm investors at galas, host dinner parties for city officials, represent the company at cultural events. His golden eyes locked on hers. Someone like you. Sophia set down her bourbon glass with shaking hands. This is insane, is it? Think about it logically. Alexander returned to his chair, watching her with those unsettling eyes. You need to rehabilitate your image after last night. Prove you're not just a party girl but a serious businesswoman. I need a New York partner who can help me navigate local society. We both benefit by pretending to be in love by being in a mutually beneficial partnership that happens to look like love to the outside world. Sophia began pacing, her mind racing. Liam would never forgive me. The family would disown me. Would they? Or would they be grateful when you single-handedly saved Nguyen Construction from bankruptcy? She stopped pacing. What are you talking about? Alexander watched her carefully. Your family's company is in more trouble than you know, Sophia. The Hudson Yards loss will be the final blow. He paused for effect. But I might be willing to throw some smaller projects your way, subcontracting work, enough to keep Nguyen afloat. In exchange for what? Me playing your fake girlfriend? In exchange for you playing my fake fiancé. The word hit the air like a bomb. Fiancé? Sophia's voice came out as a squeak. 6 months, Alexander said calmly. A whirlwind romance, a beautiful engagement, plenty of public appearances, then an amicable split. We're both too focused on our careers. We want different things, etc. By then, I'll have secured the Hudson Yards project, and you'll have established yourself as a serious businesswoman instead of a socialite. Sophia sank onto the sofa. Overwhelmed. This is crazy. Is it crazier than letting your family's company go under while you get labeled as Manhattan's biggest party scandal? She looked up at him. This infuriating man who somehow held her family's future in his hands. And what makes you think I'd ever agree to this? Alexander's smile was pure confidence. Because, darling, you don't really have a choice. The endearment sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. Don't call me darling. We'll need to work on the pet names, he said, as if she'd already agreed. The media will expect authentic couple behavior. Sophia stood abruptly. I haven't said yes, but you haven't said no either. Alexander rose too, moving closer until she could smell that intoxicating cologne again. Look, Sophia, I know this isn't ideal, but sometimes the best business deals are the ones that benefit everyone involved. This isn't business. This is insane. 6 months, he repeated softly. Save your family's company, establish your own career, and then walk away with everyone thinking you're the woman who tamed Alexander Brooks. Despite herself, Sophia felt a flutter of something: pride, excitement, fear. And what do you get out of it besides the obvious business benefits? Alexander's eyes darkened. Maybe I'm tired of being seen as the heartless corporate raider. Maybe having Manhattan's sweetheart on my arm will soften my image. I'm not Manhattan's sweetheart. You could be. He reached out, almost touching her face before stopping himself. You could be anything you want to be. Sophia Nguyen. The way he said her name made her knees weak, and she hated herself for it. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. The story is going to explode whether we control it or not. Alexander moved to his desk and pulled out a contract. My lawyers drew this up today. Everything we discussed, plus confidentiality clauses and financial arrangements. Sophia stared at the papers. You were that sure I'd agree? I was that sure. You're smart enough to recognize a good deal when you see one. She took the contract with trembling hands, 20 pages of legal jargon that would tie her life to this man's for the next 6 months. Sophia, Alexander said softly as she moved toward the elevator. For what it's worth, I don't think this will be as terrible as you're imagining. She turned back to look at him. This beautiful, arrogant, impossible man who was either her salvation or her destruction. I guess we'll find out, she said, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, Sophia caught one last glimpse of Alexander Brooks standing in his penthouse kingdom, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to make either the best or worst decision of her life. Her phone buzzed. A text from Liam. Family meeting tomorrow at 8 o'clock. M. We need to discuss damage control. Sophia looked down at the contract in her hands, then at the New York skyline rushing past the elevator windows. Damage control, she whispered to herself. If only it were that simple. Nguyen family penthouse, Upper East Side. The Nguyen family penthouse felt like a war room at 8 o'clock. M. Sharp. Sophia sat at the massive mahogany dining table that had been in their family for 3 generations. Alexander's contract hidden in her Hermes bag like contraband. The morning light streaming through the tall windows did nothing to soften the tension crackling in the air. Liam paced behind his chair like a caged tiger, his usually perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Their mother, Lin Nguyen, sat ramrod straight in her silk Chanel suit, her manicured fingers drumming against her coffee cup in a rhythm that always meant someone was about to get lectured in rapid-fire Vietnamese. "Explain to me," Liam said, his voice deadly calm, "how my sister, my intelligent, educated sister, ended up making out with our biggest competitor in front of half of New York society." Sophia winced. It wasn't making out. It was just a kiss. Just a kiss? Lynn's voice rose an octave. Media, page 6, called it the most scandalous lip lock since Meghan and Harry. Then the Wall Street Journal wrote an article about corporate espionage through romantic entanglements. They did not. Sophia protested weakly. Liam slapped a newspaper down in front of her. The Wall Street Journal business section headline read, "When Business Gets Personal, the Wynn-Brooks Alliance Question." "Oh," Sophia said in a small voice. Oh, Liam's voice cracked. "Sophia, our stock price dropped 3% yesterday because investors think you're either selling family secrets or having some kind of breakdown." Sophia's stomach churned. She hadn't thought about the stock implications. Wynn Construction might be family-owned, but they had minority shareholders, pension funds, employees whose retirement accounts were tied to company performance. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said quietly. "Then what did you mean to happen?" Lynn leaned forward, her dark eyes, so similar to Sophia's own, blazing with concern. "What were you thinking? Kissing that man?" The thing was, Sophia hadn't been thinking at all. She'd been running on pure instinct, desperation, and something else she didn't want to name. "The paparazzi were cornering me," she began. "He panicked. He was there, and I just needed an escape." "So you used Alexander Brooks as your escape route?" Liam laughed bitterly. "Do you have any idea what that man has cost us? The Tribeca project, the Brooklyn Heights deal, the Queens waterfront development. He systematically destroyed every major opportunity we've had in the past 2 years." "I know that," Sophia snapped, finally finding her voice. "I'm not stupid, Liam. I know exactly who Alexander Brooks is. Do you?" Their mother stood up, moving to the window that overlooked Central Park. "Because the Alexander Brooks I know doesn't do anything without calculating the cost-benefit analysis down to the penny. Men like him don't just randomly kiss women at charity galas." Sophia's blood chilled. Her mother was right. Of course, Alexander had known exactly who she was when he kissed her, which meant, "You think he planned it?" Sophia said slowly. "I think Alexander Brooks doesn't take a breath without it serving some purpose," Lynn replied. "The question is, what does he gain from being photographed with you?" Sophia thought about the contract in her purse, about the Hudson Yards project, about Alexander's smooth explanation of needing a New York society partner. Her mother was absolutely right. Nothing about last night had been accidental from his perspective. "Maybe he wants to make us look weak," Liam suggested, resuming his pacing. "Show that he can seduce a Wynn woman right under our noses, public humiliation, before he destroys the company entirely. Or maybe," Sophia said carefully, "he wants something else." Both her mother and brother turned to stare at her. "What do you mean?" Lynn asked. Sophia took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. "He asked to see me last night to discuss damage control." The silence that followed was deafening. "You went to see him?" Liam's voice was dangerously quiet. "After everything we discussed yesterday, after I specifically told you to stay away from that man." "You're not my father, Liam." Sophia fired back. "You don't get to tell me who I can and can't see. I get to tell you when your actions affect the family business." Liam slammed his hand on the table, making the coffee cups rattle. "Sophia, we're hanging on by a thread here. The Hudson Yards contract was supposed to save us. Without it," he trailed off. But Sophia could fill in the blanks. "Without Hudson Yards, Wynn Construction would have to start laying off employees. They'd have to sell assets. They might even have to consider bankruptcy." "How bad is it?" she asked quietly. Liam and Lynn exchanged a look. "Bad enough that your scandal couldn't have come at a worse time," her mother said gently. "We need investors to see us as stable, reliable, trustworthy. Not as a family whose daughter is involved with our biggest competitor." Sophia felt the weight of Alexander's contract in her purse like a lead brick, 20 pages that could solve all their problems and create entirely new ones. "What if," she said slowly, "there was a way to fix this, to turn the whole situation to our advantage?" Liam stopped pacing. "What are you talking about?" Sophia pulled the contract from her purse and placed it on the table. Both her mother and brother stared at it like it might explode. "Alexander offered me a deal," she said. "What kind of deal?" Lynn's voice was sharp with suspicion. Sophia took another deep breath. "A fake engagement. 6 months of public appearances playing the happy couple. Then an amicable breakup. In exchange, he throws some subcontracting work our way enough to keep the company afloat." The silence stretched so long that Sophia could hear the distant sounds of traffic 20 stories below. Finally, Liam spoke. Are you out of your mind? Think about it logically, Sophia said, echoing Alexander's words from the night before. We get desperately needed contracts. I rehabilitate my image from party girl to serious businesswoman. Everyone wins. Everyone wins except our family's dignity. Lynn said coldly. What dignity? Sophia stood up, surprising herself with her vehemence. We're about to lose everything anyway. At least this way we go down fighting instead of just fading away. Liam was reading the contract, his face growing darker with each page. These terms, Sophia, this basically makes you his property for 6 months. Public appearances, social events, media interviews. You'd have to pretend to be madly in love with the man who's been trying to destroy us. It's acting, Sophia said. Though even she wasn't entirely convinced. People do it all the time. Fake relationships for publicity. Arranged marriages for business alliances. This isn't a movie, Mija, Lynn said softly. This is your life. 6 months of lying to everyone you know, pretending to feel something you don't feel, building a relationship based on deception. What happens to you when it's over? It was the question Sophia had been trying not to ask herself. What would happen to her heart after 6 months of pretending to be in love with Alexander Brooks? What would happen when she had to walk away from those golden eyes, that dangerous smile, that intoxicating presence? I'll be fine, she said, but her voice sounded uncertain, even to her own ears. Will you? Liam set down the contract and really looked at her for the first time since she'd arrived. Sophia, I saw the way you looked in those photos. That wasn't acting. That was real attraction, real chemistry. What happens when you have to fake being in love with someone you're already halfway attracted to? Sophia's cheeks burned. It was just a physical reaction. Meaningless. Was it? Lynn joined her son in studying Sophia's face. Because from where I'm sitting, it looked like you felt something real for that man. And if that's true, this contract isn't a business deal. It's emotional suicide. Sophia sank back into her chair. Overwhelmed. They were right, of course. Alexander Brooks was dangerous to her, in ways that had nothing to do with business. The way he'd looked at her last night, the way he'd said her name, the way her entire body had responded to his touch. It wasn't fake. And it wasn't going away, but neither was their financial crisis. So, what's the alternative? She asked quietly. We lose everything anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Liam and Lynn exchanged another long look, the kind of silent communication that came from years of running a business together, of weathering crises as a family. There might be another way, Liam said slowly. Sophia looked up hopefully. The Chen Group has been sniffing around, looking for a New York partner, he continued. They're based in Los Angeles, but they want to expand east. That could take months, Lynn pointed out. Months we don't have, but it wouldn't require Sophia sacrificing herself to our enemy, Liam replied firmly. Sophia stared at the contract on the table, then at her family's worried faces. Part of her was relieved at the possibility of another option. Another part, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, was disappointed. How long would the Chen deal take? She asked. 6 weeks. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. Liam admitted, and if they say no, then we're back where we started, but with less time and fewer options. Sophia picked up the contract, feeling its weight in her hands. 20 pages that could save her family's legacy or destroy her own future. I need more time to think, she said finally. Sophia. Lynn reached across the table to touch her daughter's hand. Whatever you decide, we'll support you. But please think with your head, not your heart. Men like Alexander Brooks, they don't have hearts to break. But you do. Sophia nodded. Though she wasn't sure her mother was right about Alexander. She'd seen something in his eyes last night, something that looked almost vulnerable beneath all that confidence and control. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Decision day. Coffee at the plaza. 2 p.m. She showed the message to her family. Don't go, Liam said immediately. You have to go, Lynn countered. If you're going to turn him down, at least do it face to face. You owe him that much. Sophia looked between her brother and mother, then back at the contract in her hands. I'll go, she decided, but I'm not promising anything. As she gathered her things to leave, Liam caught her arm. Sophia, he said quietly, whatever happened between you and Brooks last night, whatever you felt, just remember that some games are too dangerous to play, especially when your heart's on the line. Sophia nodded. But as she walked toward the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late for warnings. Her heart was already on the line, whether she admitted it or not. The Plaza Hotel, Oak Room. The Plaza Hotel's Oak Room still retained its old-world elegance, despite decades of renovations and changing ownership. Dark wood paneling, crystal chandeliers, and leather banquettes created an atmosphere of understated luxury that had witnessed countless power lunches, romantic proposals, and life-changing conversations over the past century. Sophia Wynne had always loved this place. It reminded her of her grandfather, who used to bring her here for hot chocolate and stories about the old days, when business was conducted on handshakes and family honor meant everything. Today, she sat in a corner booth, nervously adjusting her pearl necklace and checking her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Alexander was precisely on time. Of course he was. Striding through the restaurant with the kind of confidence that made other diners turn to look. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, but somehow he didn't look overdressed for a casual afternoon meeting. Sophia hated how effortlessly attractive he was, how he commanded attention without even trying. "You came," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. His smile was warm, but his eyes were watchful, calculating. "I said I would." Sophia folded her hands in her lap to stop them from trembling. "Though I'm starting to question my sanity." Alexander signaled the waiter with a subtle gesture. "2 coffees, black, and whatever pastries you'd recommend," he said, then turned back to Sophia. "I take it the family meeting didn't go well." "How did you?" Sophia began, then caught herself. "Of course you knew about the family meeting. Probably know what we had for breakfast, too. Croissants and fresh orange juice for you, black coffee and the Wall Street Journal for Liam. And your mother doesn't eat before noon but drinks exactly 2 cups of espresso," Alexander said matter-of-factly. Sophia stared at him. "That's actually terrifying." "It's business," he said, but his tone was gentler than his words. "Know your opponents, know their habits, know their weaknesses. Basic strategy. Is that what I am? An opponent?" Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling golden eyes. "I'm not entirely sure what you are, Sophia Wynne. That's part of what makes this whole situation so interesting." The waiter arrived with coffee and an elaborate selection of French pastries. Sophia reached for a croissant, realized her hands were still shaking, and settled for wrapping them around her coffee cup instead. "Tell me about the Chen Group," Alexander said suddenly. Sophia nearly spilled her coffee. "How could you possibly know about that?" "Your brother made 3 phone calls to Los Angeles this morning. My sources tell me Chen Construction is looking for an East Coast partner." Alexander's smile was shark-like. "They're also hemorrhaging money from their last 2 projects and desperate enough to accept unfavorable terms from a struggling New York firm." "We're not struggling," Sophia said automatically, then felt foolish. Of course they were struggling. That's why she was here. "Sophia," Alexander said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Nguyen Construction has maybe 6 weeks of operating capital left. The Chen deal, even if it goes through, won't close for 2 months. The math doesn't work." Sophia set down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. "How do you know all this? Are you spying on us?" "I don't need to spy. It's all public record if you know where to look. SEC filings, credit reports, industry gossip." Alexander leaned forward. "The construction business in New York is a small world. Sophia, everyone knows everyone else's business." "Then why do you need me?" she demanded. "If you're so well informed about everything, if you have all the connections and contracts and power, why do you need a fake fiancé to secure your social standing?" It was the question that had been nagging at her since last night. Alexander Brooks was wealthy, successful, devastatingly attractive. Half the single women in Manhattan would line up for a chance to be on his arm. So why her? Why this elaborate charade? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the white tablecloth. When he finally spoke, his voice held a note of vulnerability she hadn't heard before. "Because I'm tired of being the villain in everyone else's story." Sophia blinked. "What?" "Think about it from my perspective," Alexander continued. "I'm the outsider, the Texas cowboy who came to New York and started taking contracts from established families. I'm the corporate raider, the heartless businessman, the man with no roots and no loyalty. Every deal I win makes me more enemies. Every success makes me more isolated." "Poor little rich boy," Sophia said, but without much venom. Alexander's laugh was bitter. "You think money solves everything? I can buy a seat at every charity gala in the city, but I can't buy acceptance. I can wine and dine city officials, but I can't make them trust me. I can acquire companies, but I can't acquire legitimacy. And you think being engaged to me will change that?" "I think being engaged to Sophia Nguyen, daughter of one of New York's oldest construction dynasties, graduate of Columbia Business School, the board member of 3 different charities, will show people that I'm not just another corporate predator." Alexander's eyes locked on hers. "You have something I can't buy, Sophia. You have a reputation for integrity." Sophia felt a flutter of something, pride, maybe, or fear. Had a reputation for integrity. Past tense. After yesterday's photos, I'm not sure what my reputation is anymore. It's recoverable. More than recoverable, it's improvable. 6 months as my fiancé, carefully managed public appearances, A few strategic interviews about balancing love and business. By the time we amicably part ways, you'll be seen as a serious businesswoman who was mature enough to put family loyalty aside for love, then mature enough to prioritize her career when the relationship didn't work out. You've really thought this through, Sophia said, impressed despite herself. I've thought of little else since last night. Alexander reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Sophia, I know this seems crazy. I know your family disapproves, but think about what you could accomplish with 6 months of positive publicity, business connections, and financial security. Sophia pulled her hand away, but not before noticing how warm his touch was, how her skin tingled where he'd made contact. What I could accomplish, or what you could accomplish through me. Both, Alexander said honestly. I won't lie to you, Sophia. This arrangement benefits me enormously, but it benefits you too. Your family's company stays afloat. You establish your own professional reputation, and you get 6 months of access to business opportunities you'd never have otherwise. And all I have to do is pretend to be madly in love with a man my family considers their worst enemy. All you have to do is be yourself, Alexander said softly. Let me worry about the rest. Sophia laughed, but it sounded strained even to her own ears. Be myself? Alexander, myself is terrified of you. Myself thinks you're dangerous and manipulative, and probably going to destroy my family one way or another. Myself also. She stopped herself before she could finish the sentence. Myself also what? Alexander prompted. Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Myself also can't stop thinking about that kiss. The admission hung in the air between them like a live wire. Alexander's eyes darkened, and Sophia immediately regretted her honesty. Good, he said finally, because that kiss is going to have to look convincing for the next 6 months. I haven't agreed to anything yet, Sophia said quickly, but you're considering it. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. Sophia picked apart a croissant, needing something to do with her hands. The Chen deal could work. Liam thinks a lot of things that aren't necessarily true. Alexander interrupted. Like that, I've been deliberately sabotaging your family's business. Sophia looked up sharply. Haven't you? I've been winning contracts that your family also bid on. That's not sabotage, Sophia. That's competition. The Brooklyn Heights property was sold to the highest bidder, which happened to be me. The Tribeca project? Your family's bid was 30% higher than mine, and their timeline was unrealistic. The Queens waterfront development? Wynn Construction didn't even submit a bid for that one, Alexander said firmly. They were stretched too thin from the other projects they had already committed to. Sophia stared at him, but Liam said, your brother has been telling your family what they wanted to hear instead of the truth about your company's financial situation, Alexander said gently. Sophia, I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just a businessman who happens to be better at business than your family right now. The words stung because they had the ring of truth. Sophia thought about all the family meetings she'd sat through, all the discussions about Alexander Brooks's underhanded tactics and corporate espionage. Had Liam been making excuses for poor business decisions? Had the family been looking for someone to blame instead of addressing their real problems? Why should I trust you? She asked quietly. Because I'm the only one who's been completely honest with you, Alexander replied. Your family loves you, but they've been protecting you from the truth about how bad things really are. I'm offering you a way to save them, save yourself, and maybe even discover who you really are when you're not living in your brother's shadow. I don't live in Liam's shadow. Alexander raised an eyebrow. When was the last time you made a major decision without consulting him first? When was the last time you pursued something you wanted instead of something your family expected? When was the last time you took a risk just because it excited you? Sophia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. When was the last time? She'd followed the path laid out for her since childhood. Private school, Columbia, charity work, appropriate social connections. Even her job at the family company was more about fulfilling expectations than pursuing her own ambitions. This is a risk, she said finally. The biggest one you'll ever take, Alexander agreed. But also potentially the most rewarding. Sophia looked around the oak room, taking in the familiar, elegant surroundings that represented everything traditional and safe about her world. Then she looked back at Alexander Brooks, dangerous, compelling, offering her a chance to step outside that safe world into something unknown and terrifying and possibly wonderful. If I agreed to this insane plan, she said slowly, what would it actually look like day to day? Alexander's smile was triumphant, as if he knew he'd already won. Public appearances together at least twice a week, industry events, charity galas, gallery openings, that sort of thing. Private dinners where we might be photographed, weekend trips to the Hamptons or Martha's Vineyard, a few carefully orchestrated intimate moments for the paparazzi. Intimate moments. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. Hand-holding, casual touches, the occasional kiss for the cameras. Alexander's eyes were intent on her face. Nothing you're not comfortable with, Sophia. This is a business arrangement, not anything else. But the way he said anything else made Sophia's pulse quicken. What about our families? The business rivalry? We spin it as a Romeo and Juliet story, love, conquering corporate rivalry. Two young people rising above their family's conflicts. Very romantic. Very appealing to the public. Alexander pulled out his phone and showed her a mock-up webpage. My PR team put this together this morning. Sample headlines. Social media strategy. Interview. Talking points. Sophia scrolled through the materials, amazed by the level of detail. You really don't leave anything to chance, do you? I can't afford to. Neither can you. Alexander leaned back in his chair. Sophia, I know this is overwhelming. I know it seems impossible. But sometimes the impossible choice is the right choice. Sophia set down his phone and really looked at him. This man who had somehow turned her entire world upside down in less than 4 hours. There was something about Alexander Brooks that called to a part of herself she'd never fully acknowledged, a part that wanted adventure and excitement, and maybe even a little danger. The contract, she said. Some of those clauses are negotiable. My lawyers tend to be overzealous. We can adjust anything that makes you uncomfortable. The exclusivity clause, no dating other people for the duration of the agreement. Necessary for authenticity. But it applies to both of us equally. The social media requirements. We need to look like a real couple online. But again, nothing you're not comfortable with. The financial arrangements. Alexander hesitated. How complicated? As my fiancé, you'll need to look the part. Wardrobe, jewelry, lifestyle expenses. I'll cover all of that. Plus a monthly stipend for your personal use. Sophia felt her cheeks burn. I don't want your money. It's not charity, Sophia. It's a business expense. You're providing a service, a very valuable service. You should be compensated appropriately. And the subcontracting work for Nguyen Construction? Guaranteed. Enough to keep your family's company operating profitably for the next 2 years. Minimum. Alexander's voice grew serious. Sophia, I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to create a situation where everyone wins. Sophia pushed away her untouched pastry and really considered the offer. 6 months of pretending to be engaged to Alexander Brooks. 6 months of public scrutiny, family tension, and constant acting. 6 months of being close to a man who already made her feel things she didn't want to feel. But also 6 months of saving her family's legacy, establishing her own career, and maybe, just maybe, discovering who she could be when she stopped playing it safe. I need guarantees, she said finally. Name them. If I do this, if I agree to this crazy plan, I need to know that my family's company will be taken care of regardless of what happens between us personally. Done. I need to maintain some control over my own life. I won't be your puppet. I wouldn't want you to be. A puppet wouldn't be convincing. And I need an escape clause. If this gets too intense, if I can't handle it, I need to be able to walk away. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. After 3 months, if you want out after 3 months, we can stage a mutual breakup. But, Sophia, his voice grew soft. I don't think you'll want to walk away. Why not? Because I think you're going to discover that being with me isn't as terrible as you're imagining. In fact, I think you might actually enjoy it. The confidence in his voice should have annoyed her. Instead, it sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. Sophia pulled the contract from her purse and set it on the table between them. I want the revisions in writing before I sign anything. Of course, and I want to start slowly. No big public announcements until I'm ready. We'll ease into it, a few casual sightings, some social media posts. Let the speculation build naturally. Sophia picked up a pen from her purse, then set it down again. Alexander, what if we can't pull this off? What if people see right through us? Alexander reached across the table and took her hand properly this time, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. Sophia, I saw the way you looked at me last night. I felt the way you responded when I kissed you. If that was acting, you're better at it than Meryl Streep. That wasn't acting, Sophia admitted quietly. I know. Alexander's smile was soft, almost tender. That's why this is going to work. Sophia looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between his tanned skin and her pale fingers, at the way her hand seemed to fit perfectly in his. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was quite possibly the worst idea she'd ever entertained. Okay, she said before she could lose her nerve. Let's do it. Alexander's smile was brilliant. You won't regret this, Sophia. As she watched him signal the waiter for the check, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she already did regret it, not because she thought it was wrong, but because she was terrified it might be exactly right. 3 weeks later, Bergdorf Goodman and beyond. Sophia stared at her reflection in the three-way mirror at Bergdorf Goodman's personal shopping suite. barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The emerald green silk dress hugged her curves in ways that made her feel simultaneously powerful and exposed, and the price tag dangling from the sleeve contained more zeros than she was comfortable contemplating. Around her, boxes from Chanel, Valentino, and Saint Laurent were stacked like expensive building blocks, each containing another piece of what Alexander's stylist called her fiancé wardrobe. "This is insane," Sophia murmured for what felt like the 100th time that morning. "This is necessary," corrected Olivia Kim. The intimidatingly chic personal shopper Alexander had hired to elevate Sophia's image. Olivia was the kind of woman who made wearing all black look like an art form, and she had the uncanny ability to assess someone's entire life story from their shoe choices. "Mr. Brooks's events require a certain caliber of presentation." Sophia tugged at the dress's neckline. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life." "In a way, you are," Olivia said matter-of-factly, making notes on her iPad, "but the goal is to make it feel like your life. The dress stays. It's perfect for tomorrow night's gallery opening." Tomorrow night, Sophia's stomach fluttered with a mixture of anxiety and something that might have been excitement. Tomorrow would be their first official public appearance as a couple since signing the revised contract. 3 weeks of careful preparation, media coaching, and what Alexander called relationship-building exercises had led to this moment. The relationship-building exercises had been complicated. They'd started with coffee dates at strategically chosen cafes, where paparazzi were likely to be lurking. Alexander had been the perfect gentleman, attentive but not overly familiar, charming but not presumptuous. He'd listened to her talk about her graduate work in sustainable architecture, her volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity, her secret dream of designing affordable housing that didn't look like institutional blocks. He'd been encouraging, thoughtful, surprisingly knowledgeable about urban planning issues. It had been terrifyingly easy to forget they were performing. Then there had been the weekend in the Hamptons, carefully orchestrated to look spontaneous. Alexander's house in East Hampton was a study in understated elegance. Weathered shingles, wide porches, gardens that looked effortlessly wild but probably cost a fortune to maintain. They'd walked on the beach while a photographer with a telephoto lens captured candid moments from a discreet distance. They'd had dinner at a restaurant where half of Manhattan society was guaranteed to see them together, and somewhere between the sunset walk and the intimate dinner conversation about their childhoods, Sophia had stopped thinking about the cameras entirely. That was the problem. The more time she spent with Alexander Brooks, the more she genuinely liked him. He was funny in unexpected ways, telling stories about his early days in Texas with self-deprecating humor that made her laugh until her sides hurt. He was thoughtful, remembering that she preferred her coffee with oat milk, and always ensuring she had a jacket when the ocean breeze picked up. He was passionate about his work in ways that reminded her of her own family's dedication to building things that would last. He was also devastatingly attractive, and Sophia was finding it increasingly difficult to maintain professional distance. "Miss Wynne," Olivia's voice cut through her reverie. The shoes. Sophia looked down at the Louboutin heels that added 4 inches to her height and probably cost more than her monthly rent. "They're beautiful, but I'm not sure I can walk in them." "Practice," Olivia said briskly. "Mr. Brooks specifically requested that you be comfortable moving through crowds. Gallery openings can be intense." Sophia had learned that everything in Alexander's world could be intense. The media attention had ramped up significantly over the past 3 weeks. Page 6 ran a daily Brooks Newen watch, featuring grainy photos of them entering restaurants or leaving his building. Her Instagram followers had tripled, and her comment section had become a battlefield between people shipping their relationship and others convinced it was a publicity stunt. The latter group wasn't wrong, but Sophia was beginning to wish they were. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "How's the shopping expedition? Olivia treating you well?" Sophia smiled despite herself. He'd been checking in regularly during what he'd jokingly called her Cinderella transformation day, though he'd been careful to give her space for the more personal aspects of the styling process. "Feeling very pretty woman," she texted back, "minus the prostitution backstory." "That's what makes you perfect for this role," came his immediate reply. "Authenticity is your superpower." Before Sophia could respond, another text appeared. "Dinner tonight. My place. I'll cook." Sophia stared at the message. They had official appearances planned for the next 3 nights, but tonight was supposed to be a break-free time, except apparently Alexander Brooks wanted to spend his free time with her too. "You don't have to entertain me 247, she typed. "I know this is just business." The typing dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. "What if I want to?" Sophia's heart did something complicated in her chest. This was dangerous territory, the space between their public performance and whatever was developing between them privately, okay. She typed before she could overthink it. But I'm choosing the wine. Deal. I'll send a car at 7. Olivia was watching her with knowing eyes when Sophia looked up from her phone. Mr. Brooks is attentive. The stylist observed. It's part of the arrangement, Sophia said quickly. Of course it is. Olivia's smile was enigmatic. Shall we continue with the evening wear? Or would you prefer to process whatever just happened? Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. There's nothing to process. Miss Nguyen, I've been styling high-profile clients for 15 years. I've seen every variation of fake relationship, publicity, romance, and arranged partnership that exists in this city. Olivia began hanging rejected dresses with practiced efficiency. What you and Mr. Brooks have doesn't read as fake. You've known us for 3 hours. I've known him for 3 years. I've never seen him text anyone during a business meeting, let alone smile at his phone like a teenager with a crush. Olivia pulled out a midnight blue gown that looked like liquid starlight. Try this one. It matches your eyes when you're happy. Sophia accepted the dress but didn't move toward the changing room. Olivia, can I ask you something? Of course. Alexander. Mr. Brooks, what's his usual type? I mean, when he dates for real. Not for business reasons. Olivia was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. In the 3 years I've worked with him, I've never seen him date anyone for real. There have been companions for events, professional arrangements, you might say. Beautiful women who understood their role and played it well. Oh. Sophia wasn't sure why that information made her feel simultaneously relieved and sad. But, Olivia continued, I've never seen him cook dinner for any of them. I've never seen him care whether they were comfortable or happy or had jackets when it was cold. The stylist's smile was gentle. Whatever this started as, Miss Nguyen, I don't think that's what it is anymore. An hour later, Sophia was back in her own clothes, but carrying enough designer bags to stock a small boutique. Olivia had insisted on sending everything to Alexander's apartment for wardrobe coordination, which meant Sophia's evening would involve trying on outfits like a life-size doll. The thought should have annoyed her. Instead, she found herself looking forward to Alexander's reaction to the midnight blue gown. Her phone rang as she was getting into the car Olivia had arranged. Liam, thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you all day. Sorry, I was busy. What's wrong? Sophia could hear the stress in her brother's voice immediately. Nothing's wrong. Exactly. But we need to talk. Can you come by the office? Sophia glanced at her watch. It was already 4:30, and she needed time to get ready for dinner with Alexander. More importantly, she wasn't sure she was ready for another family inquisition about her relationship choices. Can it wait until tomorrow? I have plans tonight. Plans with Brooks? Liam's voice sharpened. Plans with Alexander. Yes. Sophia found herself using his first name deliberately, a small act of rebellion against her family's insistence on treating him like the enemy. Sophia, I know you think you're helping the family, but I'm worried about how deep you're getting into this. The photos from the Hamptons last weekend, you looked, he paused. I looked what? Happy. Liam said quietly. Really? Genuinely happy. And that scares me. Sophia closed her eyes, leaning back against the car's leather seats. Her brother knew her too well. I am happy, she admitted. Is that such a terrible thing? It is when it's based on a lie. What happens when this arrangement ends? What happens to you when Brooks moves on to his next business deal? It was the question Sophia had been trying not to ask herself. What would happen when their 6 months were up? Would Alexander simply thank her for her service and disappear from her life? Would she be able to go back to her old routine of charity events and family dinners, pretending that these weeks had never happened? I'll be fine, she said. But the words sounded hollow even to her. Will you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're falling for him, really falling for him, and I don't think he's capable of the same feelings. You don't know him, Liam. I know men like him successful, powerful, used to getting what they want and moving on when they're bored. I've seen the way he looks at you in those photos. It's intense, but intensity isn't the same as love. Sophia opened her eyes, watching Manhattan blur past the car windows. Maybe love isn't what I'm looking for right now, isn't it? Liam's voice was gentle. Sophia, you've never been the type for casual relationships or business arrangements. You feel everything deeply. That's one of the things I love most about you. But it's also what makes this situation so dangerous. Before Sophia could respond, Liam continued. The Chen deal might actually work out. We got a call this afternoon. They want to schedule a meeting for next week. If it goes well, we might not need Brooks's subcontracting work after all. Sophia felt something twist in her stomach. Relief, disappointment, fear. That's great news. It could be. It could mean you can walk away from this arrangement before you get hurt. But what if she didn't want to walk away? What if the thought of ending things with Alexander before they'd even really begun made her feel hollow inside? "I should go," Sophia said. "I need to get ready. Just be careful tonight, okay? Remember that no matter how real this feels, it started as a business deal. Don't lose yourself in the performance." After hanging up, Sophia sat in silence for the rest of the ride to her apartment. Liam's warnings echoed in her head, mixing with Olivia's observations and her own confused feelings. Was she losing herself in the performance? Or was she finally finding herself? By the time she arrived at Alexander's building that evening, Sophia had changed clothes 3 times, applied and reapplied her makeup twice, and given herself a stern talking to about maintaining professional boundaries. She wore a simple black dress, not one of Olivia's selections, but something from her own closet that made her feel like herself. Alexander answered the door wearing jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes look golden in the hallway lighting. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and there was flour on his forearms. "You're cooking," Sophia said, surprised by how domestic he looked. "I warned you I would." Alexander stepped aside to let her enter, and Sophia caught the scent of something delicious wafting from the kitchen. "Hope you like Italian. I'm making my grandmother's osso buco recipe." "Your grandmother was Italian?" "Nonna Moretti, from my mother's side. She insisted that any man worth his salt should know how to cook for a woman properly." Alexander led her toward the kitchen, which was in a state of organized chaos. Pots simmered on the stove, wine breathed on the counter, and something that looked like homemade bread was cooling on a rack. "This is incredible," Sophia said, looking around at the elaborate spread. "You did all this yourself? Don't sound so shocked." "I do have skills beyond corporate takeovers." Alexander handed her a glass of wine, not the bottle she'd promised to bring. She realized with a start. "You forgot the wine, didn't you?" Sophia felt her cheeks heat. "I got distracted. Shopping, phone calls, family drama." "Liam?" Alexander asked perceptively. "He's worried about me. About us. About what happens when—" Sophia trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "When our arrangement ends," Alexander finished for her. He was standing closer now, close enough that she could see the flecks of brown in his golden eyes. "What did you tell him?" "That I'll be fine," Sophia said quietly. "Will you be?" It was the same question Liam had asked, but coming from Alexander, it felt different, more personal, more dangerous. "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "I'm not sure I know how to separate the performance from whatever this is becoming." Alexander was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face. Then he reached up and touched her cheek, his thumb tracing along her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "What if we stop trying to separate them?" he said softly. Sophia's breath caught. "Alexander, what if we admitted that this stopped being just business weeks ago? What if we acknowledged that whatever's happening between us is real, regardless of how it started?" "That's not what we agreed to," Sophia whispered, but she didn't step away from his touch. "Agreements can be modified." Alexander moved closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Sophia, I know this is complicated. I know your family disapproves. I know the circumstances are less than ideal, but I also know that I think about you constantly. I know that I look forward to our fake dates more than I've looked forward to anything in years. I know that when I kiss you for the cameras, I forget there are cameras at all." Sophia felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at something that could be either flight or falling. "This is crazy." "The best things usually are." Alexander's other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. "Sophia, I'm not asking you to make any declarations or change our arrangement. I'm just asking you to be honest about what you feel when you're with me." What did she feel? Safe and excited at the same time, challenged and cherished, like the most interesting version of herself she'd ever been. "I feel like I'm in trouble," she whispered. Alexander's smile was soft and dangerous. "Good. So do I." When he kissed her this time, there were no cameras, no audience, no performance required. There was just Sophia and Alexander in his kitchen, surrounded by the scents of garlic and wine and possibility. Finally acknowledging what had been building between them for weeks, Sophia melted into the kiss, her hands fisting in his sweater, her carefully maintained defenses crumbling completely. This was exactly what Liam had warned her about, exactly what she'd promised herself she wouldn't let happen, and she didn't care. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "The osso buco is going to burn," Sophia said weakly. "Let it burn," Alexander murmured. But he stepped away and turned back to the stove, leaving Sophia feeling cold and bereft without his warmth. They moved around each other in the kitchen with surprising ease, Alexander finishing the cooking while Sophia set the table and tried to process what had just happened. The domesticity of it all the way, he handed her plates without being asked. The way she knew exactly where he kept the napkins felt dangerously natural. "Tell me about your grandmother," Sophia said as they sat down to eat, desperate to redirect the conversation to safer territory. Alexander smiled, his expression softening. Nonna Moretti was 4'11" of pure Italian fire. She immigrated to Texas in the 1952nd, married my grandfather, who was a cattle rancher, and spent the next 50 years trying to civilize him with good food and better manners. Did it work? Partially. He learned to appreciate good wine and how to dance the tarantella, but he never did master the art of not tracking mud through her kitchen. Alexander's eyes grew distant with memory. "She's the one who taught me that food is love made tangible. Every meal she cooked was a way of taking care of people." Sophia looked around at the elaborate dinner he'd prepared, understanding dawning. "Is that what this is? You taking care of me?" "Maybe," Alexander said quietly. "Is that okay?" Sophia thought about all the ways people in her life took care of her. Liam's protective hovering, her mother's well-meaning interference, her friend's careful management of her feelings. All of it felt like being wrapped in cotton wool, protected from any real risk or growth. Alexander's way of caring felt different. It felt like being seen as capable of handling beautiful things, complex things, dangerous things. "It's okay," she said. They talked through dinner about everything and nothing. His early days building his business from nothing. Her dreams of revolutionizing social housing. Their shared love of obscure documentaries and terrible reality television. Alexander was an attentive listener, asking follow-up questions that showed he was genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions, not just waiting for his turn to speak. "You know," Sophia said as they shared a dessert of tiramisu that Alexander claimed was also his grandmother's recipe, "when this all started, I thought you were this calculating corporate machine, but you're actually kind of a romantic. Don't let that get around," Alexander said with mock seriousness. "It would ruin my reputation as a heartless businessman. Your secret is safe with me," Sophia promised. Then felt the weight of how many secrets they were keeping together. After dinner, they moved to the living room with the last of the wine. Alexander put on music, not the smooth jazz Sophia might have expected, but acoustic guitar music that was both melancholy and hopeful. They sat on opposite ends of his enormous sofa, far enough apart to be safe, but close enough that Sophia was hyper-aware of his every movement. "Tomorrow night," Alexander said eventually, "the gallery opening, are you ready?" Sophia thought about the emerald dress waiting in his closet, about the careful coaching she'd received on how to handle interviews and photo ops, about the performance they'd be putting on for New York society. "I think so, though I still feel like I'm playing a part that's too big for me." "You're not playing a part anymore, Sophia. You're just being yourself in a different context." Alexander turned to face her fully. "The woman I've gotten to know over the past 3 weeks, she's smart, funny, passionate about things that matter. She's strong enough to stand up to her family when she thinks they're wrong, and brave enough to take risks when the payoff is worth it. That woman belongs anywhere she chooses to be." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. When had anyone ever described her that way? When had anyone seen her as strong and brave instead of sheltered and naive? "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me that way, for making me see myself that way." Alexander was quiet for a moment, his golden eyes serious. "Sophia, I need you to know something. Whatever happens with our arrangement, whatever develops between us personally, you've changed things for me too. You've made me remember what it feels like to want something more than just the next deal, the next acquisition." "What do you want?" Sophia asked, though she wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. Alexander moved closer on the sofa, his hand finding hers. "I want to see where this goes when we stop worrying about timelines and contracts and other people's expectations. I want to know what we could be if we were just us." Sophia looked down at their joined hands, at the way her fingers seemed to belong between his. 3 weeks ago, she'd been terrified of Alexander Brooks. Now she was terrified of a completely different thing, the possibility that she was falling in love with him and that he might actually be falling for her too. "That's terrifying," she whispered. "The best things usually are," Alexander said again, echoing his earlier words. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text. Liam again. "Chen meeting confirmed for Monday." This could change everything. She showed the message to Alexander, watching his expression carefully. For just a moment, something flickered across his face, disappointment, worry before his features smoothed back into their usual controlled mask. "That's good news," he said, but his voice sounded slightly strained. "Your family's company will be secure. It would also mean we could end our arrangement early," Sophia said quietly. If we wanted to, Alexander agreed. "Do you want to?" Sophia looked at him. This complicated, challenging, unexpectedly tender man who had turned her world upside down in the best possible way. Did she want to walk away? Go back to her safe, predictable life, where the biggest risk was choosing between charity events. No, she said, surprising herself, with the certainty in her voice. I don't want to end this. Alexander's smile was radiant. Good. Because I don't either. He leaned over and kissed her again, soft and sweet and full of promise. Sophia kissed him back, letting herself fall into the moment without worrying about consequences or contracts or what her family would think. Tomorrow night, they'd face the cameras and the scrutiny and all the complicated realities of their situation. But tonight, they could just be Sophia and Alexander, figuring out what they meant to each other without any audience except themselves. When Sophia finally left that evening, her lips were swollen from kissing, and her heart was full of possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. As she rode the elevator down from Alexander's penthouse, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirrored walls, flushed cheeks, bright eyes, the unmistakable glow of a woman falling in love. Liam was right. This was dangerous, but for the first time in her life, Sophia Nguyen was okay with a little danger. Guggenheim Museum, Upper East Side. The Guggenheim's iconic spiral architecture had never looked more intimidating than it did on the night of the Hamilton Contemporary Art Foundation's annual gala. Sophia stood at the entrance, her hand resting on Alexander's arm, trying to calm the butterflies that had taken up permanent residence in her stomach. The emerald silk dress Olivia had chosen moved like liquid around her legs, and the borrowed Cartier diamonds at her throat caught the museum's dramatic lighting, but Sophia felt like she was wearing a costume for a role she still wasn't sure she could play convincingly. Breathe, Alexander murmured near her ear, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. You look absolutely stunning, and you belong here just as much as anyone else. Sophia glanced up at him, taking in the way his black tuxedo emphasized his broad shoulders and the confident way he carried himself. 3 weeks of public appearances had taught her to read his micro-expressions, and beneath his polished exterior, she could see the slight tension around his eyes that meant he was just as nervous as she was. Somehow, that made her feel better. Easy for you to say, she whispered back. You're not the one wearing shoes that cost more than most people's cars. No. I'm just the one who's about to introduce his fake fiancée to 300 of New York's most influential people, including several who would love nothing more than to see me fail spectacularly. Alexander's smile was warm, but his grip on her hand tightened slightly. We're in this together, Sophia. Whatever happens tonight, the red carpet stretched before them like a gauntlet, photographers lining both sides, their cameras already flashing at the steady stream of celebrities, socialites, and cultural luminaries making their way into the museum. Sophia recognized faces from magazine covers, movie screens, and society pages, the kind of people she'd observed from a distance her entire life, but never actually interacted with as an equal. Miss Nguyen, Mr. Wine, Brooks, over here. The shouts began the moment they stepped onto the red carpet. Sophia's instinct was to hurry past the photographers, but Alexander set a leisurely pace, stopping to pose at the designated spots with the ease of someone who'd done this countless times before. His hand never left the small of her back, a warm and steady presence that kept her grounded. Sophia, how long have you and Alexander been together? Mr. Brooks, what does the Nguyen family think of your relationship? Sophia, are you wearing the Nguyen family diamonds? That last question made Sophia's hand fly instinctively to her throat. The diamonds weren't family heirlooms, they were borrowed from Cartier, part of the elaborate staging that their entire relationship had become. But the reminder of how much of her life was currently built on careful fiction made her stomach clench. Just smile and don't answer anything specific, Alexander murmured as they posed for another round of photos. Let them speculate. Sophia pasted on what she hoped was a serene smile and tried to channel the confidence that Olivia had insisted was her natural superpower. But as the flashes exploded around them and the questions grew more invasive, she felt increasingly like she was drowning in the artifice of it all. Mr. Brooks, is it true you're planning to merge your company with Nguyen Construction? That question came from a reporter Sophia recognized from the Wall Street Journal, and she felt Alexander's entire body tense beside her. It wasn't something they'd prepared for, wasn't part of the carefully scripted narrative his PR team had developed. Tonight is about celebrating contemporary art and supporting the foundation, Alexander replied smoothly, deflecting with practiced ease. Sophia and I are just happy to be here together. But Sophia caught the way his jaw tightened slightly, the subtle shift in his posture that suggested the question had hit closer to home than he wanted to admit. Were there merger discussions happening behind the scenes? Was their relationship being used as a smokescreen for business negotiations she didn't know about? The thought sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the October evening air. They finally made it past the gauntlet of photographers and into the museum proper, where the Guggenheim's famous spiral ramp had been transformed into a cocktail party that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. Servers in crisp white uniforms circulated with champagne and elaborate canapés, while the evenings featured artists mingled with collectors, critics, and the kind of wealthy patrons who could make or break careers with a single purchase. "You did beautifully out there," Alexander said, accepting 2 glasses of champagne from a passing server. "Very natural, very authentic." "Authentic," Sophia repeated, taking a larger sip of champagne than was probably elegant. "Right, because everything about tonight is so authentic." Alexander studied her face with those perceptive golden eyes. "What's wrong? You've been tense since we arrived." Sophia looked around at the glittering crowd, at the carefully curated art installations, at the elaborate performance of wealth and culture that surrounded them. "That reporter's question about the merger, is there something you're not telling me, Alexander?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you using our relationship as cover for business deals I don't know about? Are there merger discussions happening while I'm playing dress-up and pretending to be your loving fiancé?" Alexander was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Around them, the party continued its elegant flow, but Sophia felt like they were suddenly standing in a bubble of tension that separated them from everyone else. "There are always business discussions happening," Alexander said finally. "That's the nature of what I do. But, Sophia, I would never—" "Mr. Brooks, Sophia." They were interrupted by the arrival of Eleanor Hamilton herself, the 70-something art patron whose foundation was hosting the evening. Eleanor was the kind of woman who commanded attention simply by existing. Silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing what was probably a vintage Halston gown, and carrying herself with the confidence that came from decades of being one of New York's most influential cultural figures. "How wonderful to see you both here," Eleanor said, air kissing Sophia's cheeks, with the practiced ease of someone who'd been working society events since before Sophia was born. "Sophia, dear, you look absolutely radiant. Love suits you." Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. The exhibition is incredible, isn't it? Though I have to say, the most interesting piece of art here tonight might be you two. Such a romantic story, rivals becoming lovers. Corporate competition transformed into personal connection." Eleanor's smile was knowing. "It's like something out of a novel. Life imitating art," Alexander said smoothly, but Sophia caught the slight edge in his voice. "Indeed. Now, I simply must steal Sophia away for a few minutes. There are some people I'm dying for her to meet." Eleanor linked her arm through Sophia's with the kind of authority that didn't allow for refusal. "You don't mind, do you, Alexander? I promised to return her in one piece." Before either of them could object, Sophia found herself being swept away into the crowd, leaving Alexander standing alone with his champagne and what looked like a slightly frustrated expression. Eleanor led her through the party with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly where everyone worth knowing would be positioned. Sophia found herself introduced to museum directors, gallery owners, and collectors whose names she recognized from art magazines. Each introduction felt like a test, and Sophia was increasingly aware that she was being evaluated not just as Alexander's companion, but as a potential power player in her own right. "Sophia is quite accomplished in her own field," Eleanor was saying to a group that included the director of the Whitney Museum and a collector who owned 3 Rothkos, architecture and urban planning. "Isn't that right, dear?" "Sustainable housing design, primarily," Sophia said, finding her voice. "I'm particularly interested in how we can create affordable housing that doesn't sacrifice beauty or community connection." "How fascinating," said the Whitney director, a sharp-eyed woman named Elizabeth Carter. "Are you working on any projects currently?" Sophia hesitated. Her work with Habitat for Humanity was volunteer-based, and her job at Nguyen Construction had been more about learning the family business than pursuing her own architectural vision. But standing here among these accomplished women, she felt a sudden surge of ambition that surprised her. "I'm in the early stages of developing a proposal for mixed-income housing in Queens," she heard herself saying. "The goal is to create communities that work for families across different economic levels, with shared green spaces and integrated commercial development that supports local businesses." It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd been sketching ideas and researching zoning requirements for months, though she'd never seriously considered turning those sketches into an actual proposal. "That sounds incredibly worthwhile," Elizabeth said. "Have you considered applying for the Brennan Foundation's Urban Development Grant? The deadline is next month, but for the right project." Sophia felt her heart race. The Brennan Foundation grant was prestigious and substantial, the kind of funding that could turn sketches into reality, dreams into actual buildings that would house real families. "I'd love to learn more about that," she said. Wonderful. I'll have my assistant send you the information. Elizabeth smiled warmly. It's refreshing to meet someone who's thinking about architecture as social justice rather than just aesthetic expression. As the conversation continued, Sophia felt something shifting inside her. For the first time in months, she was being seen and valued for her own ideas, her own potential contributions, not as Liam's sister or the Nguyen family daughter, not as Alexander's fiancée, but as Sophia Nguyen, architect and urban planner, with something meaningful to offer the world. You're glowing, Eleanor observed as they moved away from the group. Elizabeth Carter doesn't give out grant information to just anyone. You know, she must have been genuinely impressed. I think I was just honest about what I care about, Sophia said, still processing the interaction. Honesty is a rare commodity in this crowd, dear. It's refreshing. Eleanor paused near a striking sculpture that seemed to be made entirely of twisted metal and light. Can I give you some advice? As someone who's been navigating these waters for longer than I care to admit. Sophia nodded, curious about what wisdom this formidable woman might offer. Don't lose yourself in someone else's story, no matter how compelling that story might be. I've seen too many bright young women disappear into their partner's shadows, giving up their own dreams to support someone else's ambitions. Eleanor's eyes were kind but serious. Alexander Brooks is a remarkable man, but you're a remarkable woman. Make sure the world gets to see that. Before Sophia could respond, they were interrupted by a familiar voice. There you are. I was beginning to think Eleanor had kidnapped you permanently. Sophia turned to find Alexander approaching, his smile warm but his eyes slightly strained. She wondered how long he'd been looking for her, how much of the conversation with Elizabeth Carter he might have overheard. Just introducing Sophia to some people who share her passion for sustainable architecture, Eleanor said innocently. Did you know she's developing a proposal for mixed-income housing? Quite impressive work. Alexander's expression was unreadable as he looked between Sophia and Eleanor. No, I didn't know that. Sophia's full of surprises. There was something in his tone that Sophia couldn't quite interpret. Pride, concern, surprise, that she hadn't mentioned her project ideas to him. Well, I should let you two get back to enjoying the exhibition, Eleanor said. Sophia, do think about what we discussed. And Elizabeth will be in touch about that grant information. As Eleanor glided away, Alexander turned to Sophia with a questioning look. Grant information? He asked. Sophia felt suddenly defensive, though she wasn't sure why. The Brennan Foundation has an urban development grant program. Elizabeth Carter thought my housing project might be a good fit. Your housing project? Alexander repeated slowly. The one you've never mentioned to me. It's just something I've been sketching in my spare time. Sophia's voice faltered. I didn't think it's probably nothing. Sophia. Alexander moved closer, his voice dropping to the intimate tone he used when they were alone. Why didn't you tell me you were working on your own project? Why didn't you tell me you wanted to apply for grants, pursue your own career? Sophia looked around at the elegant crowd, at the expensive art and designer gowns and carefully orchestrated conversations. Because this isn't real, Alexander. This whole thing, us being here together, me wearing borrowed diamonds and playing your perfect fiancé, none of it's real. And my actual dreams, my actual work, that feels too real to mix up with all of this performance. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes searching her face. What if I told you that it doesn't have to be a performance? What if I told you that I want to support your dreams, your career, your grant applications? Then I'd say you're doing an excellent job of playing your part, Sophia replied. But there was sadness in her voice rather than anger. And if I told you that I'm not playing a part anymore? Before Sophia could respond, they were interrupted by a commotion near the museum's entrance. Raised voices, the flash of additional cameras, and a ripple of attention moving through the crowd like a wave. What's happening? Sophia asked. Alexander was already moving toward the disturbance, his hand finding hers automatically. As they got closer, Sophia could see a familiar figure standing near the entrance, surrounded by photographers and looking extremely out of place in his business suit among the evening wear. Liam. Her brother's eyes found hers across the crowd, and Sophia felt her stomach drop at the expression on his face. This wasn't a social visit. Sophia, Liam called out, ignoring the cameras and curious stares. We need to talk now. Alexander stepped slightly in front of Sophia, his posture protective. This isn't the time or place, Win. Don't tell me what is or isn't the time. Liam shot back. Sophia, there's something you need to know about your boyfriend and his business practices. Sophia felt the eyes of hundreds of party guests turning toward them, felt the cameras swinging in their direction. Whatever Liam had come to say, he was about to say it in front of New York's entire cultural elite. Liam, please, she said quietly. Can't this wait until tomorrow? No, it can't wait. Liam pulled out his phone, showing her something on the screen. Because tomorrow, the Times is running a story about how Alexander Brooks has been systematically destroying small construction companies across the Northeast, including detailed information about his plans to acquire and dissolve New in Construction once he's finished using our family name for his social advancement. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Around them, the party had gone nearly silent, everyone straining to hear what was being said. That's not true, Alexander said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Isn't it? Liam stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. Tell her, Brooks, tell her about the acquisition papers your lawyers filed last week. Tell her about the plan to strip our company for assets and lay off 90% of our employees. Tell her how our fake engagement is just a smokescreen to make the hostile takeover look like a friendly merger. Sophia turned to look at Alexander, her heart hammering against her ribs. Alexander, tell him he's wrong. Alexander's face had gone pale, and in his eyes, Sophia saw something that looked terrifyingly like guilt. Sophia, it's not. It's more complicated than that. Sophia's voice came out as a whisper. Alexander, tell me Liam is wrong. Tell me you're not planning to destroy my family's company. Tell me, this was never about some corporate takeover. The silence stretched between them, punctuated by the subtle sounds of cameras clicking and conversations resuming in hushed, excited tones. Sophia could feel the weight of hundreds of gazes on them, could imagine tomorrow's headlines writing themselves in real time. I can explain, Alexander said finally. That's not what I asked, Sophia said, her voice stronger now. I asked you to tell me Liam is wrong. Alexander opened his mouth, then closed it again. And in that moment of hesitation, Sophia saw the answer she'd been dreading. Oh my goodness, she breathed. It's true. All of it. Sophia, please, let me explain. But Sophia was already backing away from him, her hands shaking as she processed the magnitude of what she'd just learned the past weeks. The growing feelings, the moments of tenderness and connection, had all of it been calculated? Had Alexander been playing a long game from the very beginning, using her feelings to manipulate her into helping him destroy her own family? Did you know? She asked Liam, without taking her eyes off Alexander. When you came tonight, did you know I was falling in love with him? Liam's expression softened with sympathy. Yes, he said quietly. I could see it. That's why I had to come tonight. I couldn't let him destroy you, along with everything else. Sophia nodded, feeling strangely calm despite the chaos around her. The borrowed diamonds at her throat suddenly felt like a collar, the beautiful dress like a costume she'd been wearing in someone else's play. I need to leave, she said. Sophia, wait. Alexander reached for her arm, but she stepped back. Don't touch me. Her voice was steady, controlled, but loud enough to carry to the fascinated audience surrounding them. Don't touch me. Don't follow me. And don't ever contact me again. She turned toward the exit, Liam falling into step beside her. Behind them, she could hear Alexander calling her name, could hear the excited murmur of the crowd processing what they'd just witnessed. Sophia! Alexander's voice carried across the museum's atrium. This isn't over. Sophia paused at the entrance, turning back one last time to look at the man she'd thought she was falling in love with. He stood in the center of the elegant crowd, his perfect tuxedo and polished exterior intact, but his eyes were desperate in a way she'd never seen before. Yes, it is, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the acoustic space. Whatever this was, Alexander, it's over. And then she walked out of the Guggenheim, out of the glittering world of borrowed diamonds and designer gowns, and back into her real life, where her heart was broken, but her family was safe, and where she finally understood the difference between performance and truth. The night air hit her face like a splash of cold water, clearing away the last of the champagne haze and expensive perfume. Liam hailed a taxi, his arm around her shoulders in the protective gesture she remembered from childhood. I'm sorry, Soph, he said as they settled into the back seat. I know you cared about him. Sophia leaned back against the worn vinyl seats, closing her eyes against the tears she refused to shed. I did. I really did. For what it's worth, I think he cared about you too. Liam's voice was soft. The way he looked when you walked away, that wasn't the look of a man who was just losing a business asset. Sophia opened her eyes, staring out at the city lights blurring past the taxi window. It doesn't matter what he felt, Liam. What matters is what he chose to do with those feelings. And what he chose was to use them against me. As they drove through Manhattan toward home, Sophia's phone buzzed with text after text from Alexander, from reporters, from friends who'd seen the social media posts that were probably already spreading the story across the internet. She turned off her phone without reading any of them. Tomorrow, she would deal with the aftermath, Tomorrow, she would figure out how to rebuild her reputation and her family's business. Tomorrow, she would start the process of applying for the Brennan Foundation grant and turning her sketches into something real. Tonight, she would mourn the loss of something that had felt beautiful and true, even if it had been built on lies. But as the taxi carried her away from the Guggenheim and back toward her real life, Sophia Nguyen felt something unexpected alongside the heartbreak. Relief. Relief that the performance was over, that she could stop pretending to be someone else's version of herself, that she could finally figure out who she was when she wasn't playing a part in someone else's story. It was a start,